My dad told everyone else to leave the room. Just me. He wanted just me in there. Derek stood in that hallway for 20 minutes. I could hear him pacing. And my father, this man who never wasted a single word, pulled my hand close and said something I was never supposed to hear. He was gone by the next morning. And my brother hasn't spoken to me since. Let me back up a little. My dad's name was Raymond. He was 67 years old. He worked the same manufacturing plant for 31 years. Same lunch pail. Same route to work. Same chair at the kitchen table every single morning. He wasn't a man who talked about feelings. Not because he didn't have them. I know he did. He just didn't know what to do with them out loud. So he showed up instead. He fixed your car without being asked. He mowed your lawn before you noticed it needed it. That was his love language. My brother Derek is 4 years older than me. And I love him. I need to say that first. Because what comes next is complicated. Derek was always the one Dad worried about. Not in a tough love way. In a soft way. A protecting way. Derek bounced around his whole adult life, jobs, apartments, relationships. He was always one disaster away from something falling apart. And Dad was always quietly there to catch him. I was the stable one. The one who had her life together. And I think Dad treated me accordingly. He didn't hover. He didn't worry out loud. I got the version of him that trusted me from a distance. Which sounds like a compliment. Most of the time it just felt like distance. When Dad got diagnosed, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Derek flew home within 2 weeks. He took over everything. Appointments, medications, the hospice calls. He became the gatekeeper. And I drove 3 hours every single weekend. I sat with Dad. I cooked. I covered when Derek needed sleep. But there was something between them I couldn't read. Conversations that went quiet when I walked in. Looks across the table I wasn't meant to catch. I told myself it was just grief. That they were processing differently. But one evening I asked about Dad's finances. I was a co-signer on his main account, and Derek stepped in front of the answer before Dad could open his mouth. He said, "Dad has it handled." Dad just nodded. That was the first time I felt it. That strange feeling of being a visitor in your own family. I should have pushed harder right then. I didn't. 3 weeks before Dad passed, I came to stay for a few days. Derek was out running errands. Dad and I were in the living room. That day he seemed more alert than usual. More present. He looked at me for a long moment and said. He said, "You still have access to my account, right?" I told him, "Yeah, Dad. I do." He nodded slowly. Like he was deciding something. He said, "Pull it up. Look at the monthly transfers." I didn't ask why. I just pulled up the account right there on my phone. And I saw them. Monthly transfers. Same account. Same amount. Every single month for 4 years. $500. 47 consecutive months. I did the math standing right there. $23,000. Gone. Quietly. Consistently. I looked at him. I didn't say anything. He said, I know what you're thinking. I told him, Dad. Who is this going to? He shook his head. Not like he didn't know. Like he wasn't ready yet. He said, not today. I'll tell you when the time is right. I didn't push. I could see how exhausted he was. But I sat there with that number in my head. $23,000. Drained out slowly and quietly for 4 years. Derek came home about an hour later. And I watched him. Really watched him. The way he moved around Dad. Careful. Attentive. But also managing something. Like a man keeping plates from spinning. That night I couldn't sleep. I went back further in the account. Found a routing number in the memo field. No name. Just numbers. And then I noticed, those transfers started 4 years ago. Derek had come back to town 4 years ago. I didn't want to believe what I was starting to think. I called the bank the next morning. Explained my father was terminal. That I was co-signer. They couldn't give me an account holder name. But they confirmed every transfer had been personally authorized by my father. He was doing this on purpose. Somehow that made it worse. I texted Derek. Kept it casual. Asked if he knew about the monthly withdrawals. He called me back in 10 minutes. Voice flat. He said, don't start. It's not what you think. I told him, then tell me what it is. He said, Dad will explain when he's ready. Stay out of it. And he hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand thinking, there is no version of this that ends clean. I gave it a few more days. Then I drove back out. Dad was having a harder week. Less talking. More sleeping. The hospice nurse was coming every morning. Derek barely left the house. One afternoon he went to the pharmacy. And I sat next to Dad's bed, and I asked him again. I told him, Dad. The transfers. I need to understand. He opened his eyes slowly. He looked at me. He said, it's a child. A little girl. I went completely still. He said, she's 14. Her name is Lily. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He said, she's Derek's daughter. There it was. He said, Derek doesn't know I told you. Please. Not yet. I sat there trying to hold all of that at once. Derek had a daughter. 14 years old. No one in our family knew. And my quiet, careful father had been sending this child money every month for 4 years. I asked him how he found out. He said, her mother called me. About 4 years ago. She wasn't asking for anything. She just said I had a right to know I had a granddaughter. I heard the word granddaughter land in his chest. Heavy and warm at the same time. He loved her. He already loved her without ever meeting her. I asked if Derek knew about the money. He said, he knows I sent something. He doesn't know how much. Or how long. Then I asked the hardest question. I told him, has Derek ever met her? Dad went quiet. Not a thinking quiet. A hurting quiet. He said, that's the part one can't forgive him for. I didn't push anymore. He was fading. He fell asleep within minutes. I drove home that night with everything spinning. Derek had a daughter he had never met. Dad had been quietly trying to fill that hole. Sending money to a little girl on behalf of a son who wouldn't. Carrying that for 4 years and saying nothing to anyone. I thought about Lily. 14 years old. Growing up without a father. Her mother telling her whatever she could to soften that absence. I thought about a little girl somewhere who didn't know she had a grandfather dying 3 hours away. A grandfather who already loved her. And I thought about Dad. The word he used, can't forgive. My father, who never said things like that. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just a secret. This was a whole life existing alongside ours. And nobody had said a word. Dad declined fast that next week. He stopped eating. The pain medication got heavier. The hospice nurse started staying longer each visit. Derek was running on no sleep. And I felt for him, genuinely. Whatever else was true, he was watching his father die. That's real grief. But there was a wall between us now. I knew something I wasn't supposed to know. And he could feel it. One evening we were sitting in the kitchen. Dad was asleep. The house was quiet. Derek looked at me and said. He said, you talked to him alone. When I was at the pharmacy. I told him, we talked, yeah. He said, what did he tell you? I didn't answer. He said, I swear, if he told you about, and then he stopped himself. The air went heavy. I told him, Derek. He stood up and started pacing. Said it wasn't my business. Said Dad had no right. Said it was his life, his decision, and nobody understood the full story. I told him, there's a little girl. He went still. I told him, she's 14 years old. And Dad has been sending her money every month because you wouldn't. His face changed. I've tried to describe it 100 times. It wasn't exactly guilt. It was more like a man who had kept a door locked for a very long time, and suddenly the door was open and he had to look at what was behind it. He said, you don't know what happened between me and her mother. I told him, she's not just something that happened between you and her mother. She's a person. He said, I send money. I told him, Dad sends money. He had nothing to say to that. I left the room. I didn't trust myself to keep talking. I went and sat with Dad in the dark. Held his hand. And I thought about the pattern. Derek had been struggling his whole adult life. And Dad had been quietly cleaning up behind him. Lending money. Covering. Making excuses. Never letting Derek fully face what his choices cost other people. And I had been the strong one. The one who didn't need anything. So I got the version of Dad who trusted me from a distance. Derek got all the visible love. Because he was always in crisis. I got the quiet kind. The kind that never got said out loud. That hit me harder than anything. Not the secret about Lily. The pattern underneath it. Dad had been so busy saving Derek from himself that he forgot to tell me he saw me. That he noticed. That he was proud. And now he was dying. And the one thing he needed, someone to find that little girl and make sure she wasn't forgotten, he couldn't ask Derek. He had to ask me. Because he already knew Derek would fail her again. 2 nights before he passed, Dad asked for me alone. Derek didn't fight it. I don't know if he was too tired or if some part of him already knew what was coming. He walked outside and sat in his car. I pulled a chair close to the bed. Dad's breathing was slow. Labored. But his eyes were clear. He said, "There's a box. In my closet. Under the floorboards. 3rd board from the left." I told him I'd find it. He said, "Everything you need is in there. Her mother's name. Their address. Her school. All of it." My throat tightened. He said, "She knows who I am. We've talked. On the phone mostly. And twice I drove out to see her. I didn't tell Derek. I just sat there." He said, "She's a good girl. Smart as anything. She has her father's nose." He said it without anger. Just this quiet, bone-deep sadness. I told him, "Dad, did you ever push Derek? To step up?" He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "I tried. When she was small. He wasn't ready. And then the years just went." I told him, he could still. He shook his head. He said, "I'm not asking you to fix your brother. I'm asking you to make sure she doesn't disappear." I understood exactly what he meant. Not to replace her father. Just to be proof that she mattered. That someone in this family saw her. I told him I would. He held my hand. Then he said, "You always show up. You always did." That was the most my father ever said to me about who I was. In my entire life. And it came at 11 o'clock at night in a hospice bed. I didn't sleep at all after that. Derek came back inside around midnight. He didn't ask what we talked about. He sat in the chair by the window. In the morning, Dad was gone. It happened quietly. His breathing slowed, and then it stopped. We were both in the room. Derek made a sound I'd never heard from him before. Like something cracking open that had been sealed for too long. I put my hand on his back. And I thought, he doesn't know about the box. He doesn't know Dad drove out to see Lily. He doesn't know she called him on the phone. He doesn't know how much he already missed. 3 days after the funeral, I found the box. 3rd board from the left, just like he said. It was a shoebox. Inside, an envelope with a name, an address, a phone number. A school name. A birthday card, handmade, colored pencils, bubble letters. A photograph of a girl with dark hair and my father's exact nose. And a letter. Dad's handwriting. Not addressed to anyone. Just written. I read it standing right there in that closet. He wrote about Lily. About the phone calls. About driving out to see her twice in secret. He wrote that she called him Grandpa Ray. He wrote that she once asked if she had any aunts or uncles, and he told her maybe someday. He wrote, "I don't know if I did the right thing keeping this secret. I only know I couldn't leave her with nothing. I sat down on the floor of that closet and I cried. Not politely. The ugly kind. The kind you can't control. I called Derek that same night. I told him I'd found the box. I told him about the letter. I told him Lily had been calling our father Grandpa Ray. That Dad had driven out to see her. Twice. Silence. He said, he went to see her. I told him, twice. He said, without telling me. I told him, Derek. She made him birthday cards. Colored pencils. She called him Grandpa. He said, "Why are you telling me this?" I told him, "Because she's real. She has a name and a face and she loved our father. And Dad is gone. And she's going to find out. And she's going to grieve. And she has no one in this family who claims her." He said, "She has her mother." I told him, "She has a 14-year-old girl's version of a father. Which is an empty chair. Which is a blank space at every holiday. Which is her wondering every single day what was wrong with her that made you stay away." Silence. I told him, "I'm reaching out to her mother. I'm making sure Lily knows what happened to Dad. You can come with me or you can stay home." "But I'm going." He said, "You're going to blow everything up." I told him, "Dad kept the secret to protect you. I don't have that same reason." He said, "You had no right to be in that room." I told him, "He asked for me, Derek. He specifically asked for me." He hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand. And I wasn't angry. People expect me to say I was furious. I wasn't. I was just sad. In a way that went all the way down. Because I finally understood why Dad never pushed Derek harder. Because Derek was never ready at 25, or 30, or 38. And Dad kept hoping. Kept sending money. Kept driving out in secret because the alternative was admitting his son had failed her completely. And Dad couldn't say that out loud. Even in that letter. Even at the end. He never wrote Derek's name with blame attached to it. He just wrote about Lily. About how she laughed. About how smart she was. About how much she looked like her father. Like he was leaving Derek one last door to walk through. All Derek had to do was open it. I reached out to Vanessa, Lily's mother, 6 weeks after the funeral. She was quiet on the phone at first. Careful. I understood that completely. I told her who I was. I told her Dad had passed. I told her he left things for Lily. She started crying before I finished the sentence. She said, "He was the only one who ever called." I had to pull myself together before I could keep talking. I drove out to meet them the following weekend. Lily was exactly what Dad described. Dark hair. Quiet eyes. Sharp and quick. And she had Dad's nose. I saw it the second she walked into the room. She'd drawn him a birthday card that spring. Never got to send it. She showed it to me. The front said Grandpa Ray in bubble letters with little stars. Inside she wrote, "I hope you feel better soon. I saved you a seat at my graduation. I held that card and I couldn't breathe. Vanessa hadn't told her yet that he was gone. Still waiting for the right moment. We sat at that kitchen table for 2 hours. At some point Lily looked at me and said, she said, "Is my dad ever going to want to know me?" I didn't lie. I told her I didn't know. She nodded. Like she'd already been preparing for that answer. Like she'd been rehearsing for it her whole life. Derek never called. Never reached out to Vanessa. Never asked about Lily. And he's never forgiven me for going. For what I did to the family. As if Lily were something I invented. As if she weren't already sitting at a kitchen table with a birthday card she never got to send. Here's what I keep coming back to. Dad knew Derek wouldn't change. He knew it long before the end. He stopped asking Derek to be better. He stopped waiting. Instead, he drove 3 hours in secret to sit across from a little girl who called him Grandpa Ray. He did it twice. And both times he drove home alone and didn't say a word. He never told us that. He never told anyone. That was the thing he never said, that he had already made peace with who his son was. And it broke his heart every single day. He never told Lily he was dying. But she saved him a seat at her graduation, just in case he made it.